This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thank you for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Efrem Graham. We want to begin this half hour with a meeting scheduled today between President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It's taking place at the White House. The meeting is pivotal as the two leaders are talking about major issues affecting the Middle East, from Gaza to Iran.
The ceasefire and hostage release deal between Hamas and Israel will be a main topic for the two leaders. Before reporters in the Oval Office, President Trump said he's not sure the ceasefire with Hamas will hold up.
I have no assurances that it'll hold. I mean, I've seen people brutalized. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. No, I have no guarantees that the peace is going to hold.
The president asked his Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, about the deal.
It's holding so far. So we're certainly hopeful, and that's the president's direction. Get the hostages out, save lives, and come to hopefully a peaceful settlement of it all. So far it's holding.
Some Israelis are hopeful with President Trump in office. It might be an opportune time to declare sovereignty over Israel's biblical heartland in the area known as the West Bank. Asked if he supported Israel annexing that region, Trump said he wouldn't talk about that, while explaining how the Jewish state is a tiny nation in the region.
It's a small country in terms of land. See this pen, this wonderful pen? My desk is the Middle East. And this pen, the top of the pen, that's Israel. That's not good, right? You know, it's a pretty big difference.
Trump has repeatedly advocated for Palestinians in Gaza to be relocated to Egypt, Jordan, or other countries, either temporarily or permanently, while Gaza is rebuilt, an idea Arab nations are rejecting. Trump will also view the 47-minute raw video of Hamas's massacre on October 7th. The Prime Minister's office announced Netanyahu will extend his trip through Saturday because of the many requests for meetings. Monday night, he met with Christian leaders in a meeting hosted by Governor Mike Huckabee, who, if confirmed, will be the next U.S. ambassador to Israel. House Speaker Mike Johnson also announced Netanyahu will meet with congressional leaders, who stated, "We need to be supporting Israel right now as strongly as ever." And Politico reports Trump is set to sign an executive order defunding the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA. And the Wall Street Journal says the White House has asked congressional leaders to approve a $1 billion military aid package to Israel, including 1,000-pound bombs and heavy equipment. Meanwhile, a Palestinian terror attack today at an Israeli base left a number of injured. It comes as IDF forces are engaged in an operation called Iron Wall to rid terror groups inside Palestinian cities like Jenin and Nablus. And in the aftermath of the war with Hamas, a new poll shows 71% of Israelis oppose the establishment of a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria, while 68% support declaring sovereignty there. And one issue the two leaders are certain to discuss is Iran. The New York Times reports new intelligence reveals Iran is looking to accelerate the timeline for producing a nuclear weapon.
And Chris is joining us now to continue our conversation. So, Chris, why don't Arab states want to relocate Palestinians from Gaza?
Well, Efrem, you have to go back to the history. Back in 1970, the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, under Yasser Arafat, they tried to overthrow Jordan. They were forcibly removed, and they went to Lebanon. That's where they regrouped. And then the attacks on Israel, which led to the Israeli invasion in 1982 into Lebanon. So Jordan and Egypt, they don't want Palestinians from the Gaza Strip to destabilize their country. You realize that this population in Gaza, since almost 20 years ago, back in 2005 or 2007, they've been raised on an ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the mother organization of Hamas. Now, they say they don't want to undermine the Palestinian cause, but it really seems to go deeper than that, and they don't want their own countries destabilized. Trump is going to be meeting with Jordanian King Abdullah and Egyptian President El-Sisi soon. The outcome of those meetings, Efrem, really going to go a long way to what's going to happen with the people in Gaza, and that's going to have a huge impact on the Gaza Strip itself, Israel, and the whole region.
Chris, talk to me now about some of the Palestinians being released. Who are they, and what's going on when it comes to money being given?
Well, that's called the pay to slay. And part of this hostage Israeli deal, the Israelis really dread what's next. What happened in 2011, 1,024 terrorists were in exchange for one IDF soldier. Over 80% of those returned to terrorism, including Yahya Sinwar, who became the head of Hamas in Gaza. So this time, there's men like Wael Qassam. He's serving 35 life sentences. He's responsible for a 2002 bombing of a Moment Cafe. That's just a few blocks away from here. In that attack and others, he's responsible for murdering 35 Israelis. Another one is serving 32 life sentences. But there are dozens of these men that are being released. And that so many Israelis are concerned that they're going to continue their terror attacks. In total, in terms of the money, Ephraim, $141 million has been paid to over 700 terrorists that are being released. And one other question about Iran, I just wanted to mention, Ephraim, you know, the focus has been on Gaza and the hostages, but it's going to be a very important issue that Netanyahu and Trump discuss and try to be on the same page on what to do with Iran's nuclear program, which many people say is really on the verge of a breakout to a nuclear weapon.
Chris, what are we hearing and sensing about the condition of Israeli society?
Well, I would say that shredded is a word that I've heard recently, deeply conflicted, 16 months of war. On the one hand, they're jubilant about the release of the hostages, but every release reminds people of October 7th and reminds people that more people are in Hamas's hands. And so Hamas has staggered out the release. It's really a psychological manipulation and warfare against Israel. That's why, Ephraim, on today's Jerusalem Dateline, we're going to be talking to a lady, Hannah Ben Haim. She's going to explain some of that. We're also going to have analysis by CBN senior editor John Wagi about the Trump Netanyahu meeting, an analysis of what this is going to mean for Israel, the U.S., and for the region going forward.
All right. Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell, thanks as always for your insight. And, of course, we here are praying for you and our team there in Israel. In other news at this hour, President Donald Trump is pausing his tariffs on Mexico and Canada, at least for now. Wendy Griffith explains why.
The president is asking Mexico and Canada to do their part in stopping the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants from flooding the U.S. border, saying this is about a drug war, not a trade war.
Fentanyl has killed this year at least 200,000 people. It's pouring in from China through Mexico and Canada, and they've got to stop it. And if they don't stop it, the tariffs are going to get worse, a lot worse.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau posted Monday afternoon on X that the pause would occur while we, quote, work together, saying that his government would name a fentanyl czar, list Mexican cartels as terrorist groups, and launch a Canada-U.S. joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. President Trump also agreeing to put tariffs on hold with Mexico for 30 days after their leader told him they would send 10,000 troops to the border to help tackle illegal immigration and drug trafficking. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum saying it was a good conversation with a framework of respect, adding the U.S. says it will work to prevent the trafficking of high-powered weapons to Mexico. The Monday drama temporarily rattled the markets, stocks turning around after the word of the agreement with Mexico. The Dow ending the day just 122 points after tumbling nearly 700. The Heritage Foundation's Richard Stern told CBN's Faith Nation the tariff threats are working and that stopping the flow of deadly drugs into the U.S. is key.
I would say the most important part is this isn't really about the economics. This is a negotiating tool to be able to stop the flood of fentanyl, to deal with these other geopolitical issues.
Meanwhile, China has now countered Trump's across-the-board tariffs with some selective tariffs of its own, including a retaliatory 15% on U.S. coal and natural gas products. Trump says he plans to talk to the Chinese president in the next few days. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Coming up, one author shares a faith-based way to lose weight. Stay with us. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. Millions of Americans are trying to lose weight. Doctors say obesity can lead to a number of health problems like diabetes and cancer. While some people choose expensive weight loss aids such as Ozempic, others are finding success the natural way. On this week's Healthy Living, Christine Trimp describes a faith-based method she used to lose 100 pounds, which she details in her book. It's called Sugar Freed.
I am so happy to speak to your Christian audience today. As a woman who's been on an amazing faith journey, I want to start with where this transformation began taking place in my life. About 10 years ago now, I was at Rocky Mountain National Park with my husband. We were there for our 25th anniversary party or anniversary celebration. And he wanted to go climb up to Nymph Lake. So we head over to the trail marker and I saw it was a half mile away. And I thought, oh, I could do that, half a mile, right? Well, Lori, I was only able to go up about half that trail and I could go no further. I was exhausted. I was exasperated. I was sucking in air. And I told my husband to go on without me. And I assured him it would be okay. And in that moment, I had to sit down on a stump on the side of that path and really just began to contemplate my life. The reason I couldn't climb is because I was 100 pounds overweight. I was classified morbidly obese at that time. My joints ached. I couldn't breathe. I was pre-diabetic. I had a whole plethora of health issues that were starting to pile up. And I remember sitting in that moment as a casual Christian, which is what I used to call myself. I had been raised in a church family, raised in the faith, but I was not walking out my faith in a deep, abiding relationship with Jesus. But I remember sitting in that moment that I did have a tiny mustard seed of faith. And I said to the Lord, I said, I just want to feel better. I just want to feel better. And at that point, I had given up on losing the weight after 30 years of yo-yo dieting, but I really just did want to feel better. And praise God, he did meet me in that moment. And I consider it my turning point moment, my take ownership moment, because I did go home from that trip. I left Colorado, I went back to Michigan, and I finally did start taking action and taking ownership on my health journey. And I knew I had to do something because at that time I was only 48 years old. I began contemplating my mortality. I began contemplating why am I even here? What is the purpose? And so just like the Lord met David in his miry pit that David writes about in Psalm 40. That's part of my testimony, is knowing that God met me in that moment. And he did lift me up from that miry pit. He did put my feet on a solid rock and set me out on this path to losing a massive amount of weight, which is something I never imagined, Lori, after 30 years of living in yo-yo dieting. And with the failures mounting, and I would lose a little, or I lose a little, gain a lot. That's the kind of cycle I lived in. And for God to meet me in that moment, I'm just so happy to be here to share that story, because I always want my story to be other women's stories.
And you can see Healthy Living on the CBN News Channel tonight at 8:30 Eastern. You can also watch it on YouTube. Still ahead, two pastors who lost their churches in California's wildfires share their heartbreak and their hope. Stay with us. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. The fires in Los Angeles destroyed thousands of structures, including many churches. Among them include Lifeline Fellowship Christian Center in Altadena and Calvary Church of Pacific Palisades. Charlene Aaron talked to Bishop Charles Dorsey and Pastor John Anderson, the leaders of those congregations.
First of all, our hearts go out to the both of you. I want to start with you, Bishop Dorsey. Now, understand that members of your church had originally gone to check on the church when the fires started. They reported initially that the building was still standing, but later things took a tragic turn. Tell us about that.
Yes. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for having us. It was just a total devastation. Early that morning, I started receiving calls that the fires were moving rapidly to our direction. And we have several members that live really, really close to the church. And they indicated to me that the building was still standing and they were evacuating. And as time progressed, I started to get calls that the building was on fire. and I'm just not sure what to do, how to do, and I'm calling the fire department, trying to get an update. Just total devastation. It's unbelievable what has happened, and I'm so thankful for the members of our church who are willing to try to put the fires out themselves, but it was so darkened and winds and fire. I told them to go to safety and just evacuate as fast as possible.
And so we know that your church, unfortunately, was literally burned down to the ground. And
Yes.
our hearts certainly go out to you and your congregation, your family, everyone involved. Pastor Anderson, I understand that your church suffered extensive damage while it's still standing, major damage at your church. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the roof of the sanctuary caught fire and burned out. Probably about 50% of the roof is completely gone, and the rest of it is severely damaged. And the sprinklers came on, so there's about 3 feet of standing water in the sanctuary, and so it looks like it's going to be a teardown kind of situation. But we'll see. We're still praying that some of the steel has remained intact and we can rebuild around that. But yeah, it's pretty significant.
Wow, the pictures are just absolutely devastating. We know that Bishop Dorsey, in addition to dealing with the loss of your church, members of your church have been affected personally. How are you trying to meet their needs right now?
It's been a challenge, but we are fortunate to pastor people that just really, truly love God. And we're just working together. The community has come together. There's a love for God throughout our congregation, and we're just working together, communicating. We've been able to meet at a fringe church the past 3 Sundays, and that has really blessed us. That has really blessed us.
Pastor Anderson, I understand both of your associate pastors lost their homes, and something that you said in a recent interview was that no one in the community has ever dealt with the scope of destruction that you're seeing. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, it's Southern California, so wildfires are fairly common. In fact, when we first started to see smoke on that Tuesday morning, we kind of shrugged it off initially as like, well, yet another wildfire, and I'm sure they'll get it contained. And so when we started to get evacuated, I think that's when it started to hit people. And somebody told me, I've actually only been the pastor of this church for about a month now. We were in the middle of our first staff meeting when we got evacuated. So I was kind of new to it all. And somebody told me it's the first time we've ever evacuated the church in the last 12 years. And so I think it slowly dawned on people just how significant this fire was. And then, by the time it was all said and done, almost 200 of our families lost their homes between the church and the school. Wow. And so it's, you drive around the Palisades and it's just apocalyptic. And it's really hard to wrap your head around.
Wow. Bishop Dorsey, I understand that your church was pretty historic in the community. It's been there for a long time, and you attended this church as a child?
Yes, it is actually the original church that my mother brought us to as children. So it's been a staple in our community, our family, and it's just been a blessing. It always has served the community well. So my original pastor was there. It's the only church I've ever attended outside of going away to college.
And Pastor Anderson, you mentioned your church also ran a church. How has the school and the students, I should say, and their families been impacted? What are they doing now?
Yeah, we've been out of school for, since the 7th, and our head of school has been doing a phenomenal job, and his staff been doing a phenomenal job trying to get another location set up. And we have secured an office building in Santa Monica, and are going to be starting school on February 10th. But that's more than a month where parents have had to care for their kids while also trying to navigate their own jobs and finding a new place to live and figuring out what their future is.
Coming up, a recap of Monday's traditional Super Bowl opening night. Stay with us. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. Super Bowl 59 is now just a few days away, and this year's big game is at the Caesars Superdome in New Orleans. Monday kicked up the traditional Super Bowl opening night, and CBN sports reporter Will Dawson was there to talk to some of the players from the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles.
If you live in this country, chances are you'll be tuned in to Sunday's Super Bowl. More than 200 million are expected to watch Super Bowl 59 from New Orleans. The players know there's no bigger stage to proclaim the gospel.
It's important to me every single day. It's not about football. It's just giving glory to God for being able to walk around and live my life, to have a beautiful family, to be able to have impact on others. And I'm going to use that stage and that platform, win or lose, to give glory back to Him, to hopefully bring others closer to Him, and that they can have the same love for life that I have because of that.
Humbling, and it's just unbelievable. You know, kind of each day and especially each game, I just say, God, use me for your glory, and that doesn't mean winning football games always, but just to be in a position in this platform and knowing it's by His grace and His providence is just, you just know that He's treated me much better than anything I deserve.
I believe I'm a Christian. It's so important to have a solid foundation in that. My mom instilled that in me, and you know, all credit goes out to Him. And, you know, I'm just so blessed that He's been giving me this opportunity, you know, to show the skills that He gave me on such a big platform.
There's been times I've had injuries. I've been out for like the year, been out for the season, and I had to come back harder, come back from those and recover from that. I feel like those have been really tough, but God really got me through it.
New Orleans is known for its spicy cuisine. This year at Super Bowl 59, we're noticing a little bit more salt sprinkled in amongst some of the players. In New Orleans, Will Dawson, CBN Sports.
Salt, the salt of the earth. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I remind you, you can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time as well as online. That address is cbnnews.com. Take a moment, let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that by emailing us, newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Hope you have a terrific Tuesday and join us right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye. God bless.